Hey, fair warning, just got done recording this. It turned into just this really long-winded, meandering rant. I apologize for that. I had a lot on my mind, a lot of things I wanted to get off my chest, so bear with this very haphazard and poorly edited gameplay commentary kind of thing. So, yeah, let's have a chat. Let's chill for a bit. There's a lot to talk about because the software development kit got released for TF2, and without getting into too much detail, this means that Team Fortress 2, and a bunch of other Valve games, now have fully legal, official mod support. You can pretty much do whatever the hell you want with TF2, so long as whatever you do is offered as free and doesn't affect items. Mod creators can now upload their projects on Steam for everyone to enjoy. Existing mods, like Open Fortress and TF2 Classic, no longer have to risk working with illegally leaked source code. New creators can freely and legally enter the modding space without fear of getting shut down by a DMCA, and us, the players, will conveniently have access to these mods through Steam. No more jumping through a whole bunch of hoops with custom installers or unzipping files in the right place. This SDK update is genuinely awesome. Valve has finally acknowledged TF2's modding scene in the healthiest way possible. But not before years of confusion and bewilderment thanks to Valve's notorious lack of communication. This is still Valve, after all. For anyone paying attention, this SDK update has been a long time coming. Valve initiating communication with Open Fortress and TF2 Classic back in 2021, and then asking them if they wanted mod support through Steam, which led them to temporarily take down the projects as part of an agreement, and then Valve going dark for months, and the projects go back up, and then Valve going dark for years. It's a pretty clear sign Valve started working on this a long time ago. It took them nearly 4 years to finish this because, well, really only one person has been doing most of the work on TF2 lately.
Yeah, Joshi, who's a contractor, works on various things for us, but working on Source 1 updates and maintenance for compatibility and various things. Hooked up the 64-bit build of Team Fortress 2, and they were eager to do that work, so we were like, yeah, sure. And that's about it.
They've been working at Valve since, I think, 2021, and one of their multiple projects was pushing out this update for the SDK. The evidence for that is their affinity for frogs, a signature left behind loud and clear inside of the SDK, as it has been for years now. One person, one guy, has been doing the vast majority of the work on anything TF2 related. Frankly, for a multi-billion-dollar company with one of the most beloved IPs in gaming history that earns them millions of dollars a year, it's really pathetic they're only willing to allocate one person to work on the game, but I digress. Official mod support's awesome. That's really cool. It's another step in a positive direction after a long line of missteps, a long history of neglect. But given the insane hype wave around the SDK release, as is typical for the Valve cycle, I think many people have lost a very important perspective. I've seen a lot of people take the release of the SDK as like it's the second coming of Christ, but for players who don't really care about mods, like myself, nothing has changed. Much like community server game modes like Versus Saxton Hale or Death Run or Jailbreak or what have you, mods have always appealed to smaller minorities within the player base. And let's be real, for most players, mods are by no means a replacement for the vanilla game. I don't want to play mods. I just want to play vanilla Team Fortress 2. And the SDK release, however awesome it is, changes nothing about TF2's current situation, one that has been largely the same since 2018. A beloved game kept on life support with the absolute bare minimum level of maintenance reluctantly delivered at a snail's pace. And frankly, I'm a little tired of people telling me to just go play TF2 Classic instead, which doesn't even come close to resembling a classic TF2 experience. You know, Team Fortress 2, classic Team Fortress 2, with its green team and 10th class and a giant boat anchor. Yeah, that's what TF2 means to me, man. I think I speak for many of us when I say that most players just want good, properly supported TF2. Official mod support, as cool as it is, has absolutely zero impact on the base game, which is still in desperate need of attention. Since I released my last main channel video, and the SDK being released a few days later, interesting coincidence, messages have poured in, saying that we can simply fix vanilla TF2 with mods, that we can remove casual mode and replace it with quickplay all on our own. Well, even before the SDK release, someone already remade quickplay, Mastercoms, and their community quickplay tool, which works pretty well, but that's the problem. It's community operated, without dedicated server support, and with the distinct lack of good community servers thanks to Valve killing them in 2016, community quickplay, or general fixes for the vanilla game via mods, are pointless without official implementation, and therefore the main game fueling them. A quickplay mod will never redirect enough traffic to have a significant impact. Mods can't improve the frankly abysmal status quo that TF2 has been in since 2018. However, we are witnessing a very interesting shift in a new direction, where anyone can submit code fixes for the SDK. It seems like some smaller fixes have already been accepted into the main branch, which is a really good sign, because that means there's now a high chance that those will be plugged into vanilla TF2 as community fixes. But community fixes are nothing new, and we've only received a handful of these over the last couple of years. Most of these fixes range from inconsequential to only slightly noticeable by the player base at large. Because remember, only one guy is doing most of the work. I really do hope, I pray, that we keep receiving more bug fixes in the coming months. Sadly, any major improvements will likely continue to elude us, simply because they require more work that goes beyond the limits and the shot calling of a single person. Valve has a long way to go with improving the game situation, and I strongly believe that we need to keep pushing for more improvements and demanding for more work to be done. Removing the bots is not enough. That was below the bare minimum requirement to keep the game functional, and now that the gears are turning again, it's time to grease them. This is why I'm making a follow-up video to my last main channel video. In fact, I'm now planning a short series of videos where I'm gonna go over what I think needs to be done to genuinely help TF2. I'm not asking for the epic updates of old, I'm not asking for balance changes or new weapons. Most of us know that those days have long since passed. But Team Fortress 2 is still plagued with problems that we've just put up with for years. Most of TF2's current problems are rooted in how players connect to game servers, the matchmaking system, and not the gameplay itself. Mods can't fix this. TF2 also desperately needs optimization, bug fixes, and other quality of life changes that would vastly improve the experience for new and old players alike. No player should have to install a graphical config on a mid-range PC just to have stable FPS. That's fucked up. That's something that Valve could fix, but they just haven't since 2007. Awesome. Doing anything would greatly improve player retention and maybe spur a little bit of growth, something that Valve clearly wants. Otherwise, they would have cut any and all support and shut down the game years ago. Believe it or not, this SDK update has me really excited. Not because I care about mods, but because we have someone that's actually working on Team Fortress 2. This hasn't happened in any serious capacity for years. Who knows who's pulling the strings? Who knows if the work is being done voluntarily or if higher-ups are demanding it, but the work is being done. There has never been a more perfect time since 2018 to start asking for improvements. Now that Valve has shown us that they're willing to give us a little attention, they can absolutely spare more time. They have the resources, and they have the manpower. And before people say I'm getting ahead of myself, let me remind everyone, especially the Valve bootlickers and naysayers, that Team Fortress 2 is still offered as a fully monetized, active product on Steam. Valve still throws loot boxes into this game 3 times a year, and expects us to spend money on them. TF2 still earns Valve in the ballpark of tens of millions of dollars a year. Here's proof of that on your screen right now. And this is a very conservative estimate. TF2 makes way more money than anyone can accurately calculate. Valve very clearly wants TF2's longevity, and they very clearly care about the money that TF2 earns. Otherwise, they wouldn't have announced front and center that they don't want mods fucking with their hats. Directly quoting their blog post, players have a lot of investment in their TF2 inventories, which translates from corpo speak to people still give us a lot of money for TF2 items. Steam Workshop contributors have created a lot of content. Don't make mods that have the purpose of trying to profit off Workshop contributors' efforts, which translates to don't steal what's legally our property or redirect revenue away from us by monetizing your mods. Otherwise, we'll nuke your shit from orbit. Again, most of us just want good, properly supported TF2. It is by no means unreasonable to ask for improvements when Valve still milks TF2 for profit. It takes a serious level of disconnection from reality to even come close to considering this as entitlement. Not to mention, a product's age is irrelevant if the company managing it still sells it and profits off of it. And allow me to vent for a moment and tank my dislike ratio on this video. Since my last main channel video came out, I've never experienced this shit at this scale. I've seen little pieces of this, but not to this extent and not to this severity. And I know what I'm about to say is not exclusive to Team Fortress 2, looking at you, Halo, and Minecraft, and now even Counter-Strike, but you cannot address TF2's flaws, or Valve's shortcomings, or any part of the last decade of Valve's neglect without this really vocal contingent shrieking out in what appears to be pain. The TF2 sphere has a massive toxic positivity problem, and it needs to be aired out more often. This is nothing new. This is nothing new, it's been this way for years. Valve bootlickers' tongues are vicious and will scrape their heels at every chance they get. But it's this constant and almost expected overtly positive conduct and dismissal of concerns and criticisms that lets Valve walk all over us. It's a huge part of why TF2 has been in this miserable status quo for so long. From the years of neglect, the overdue bot fix, the broken matchmaking system, all the way down to broken maps and shitty hats. God forbid you criticize Valve or any facet of TF2, lest you get lambasted for not kissing the ring. I acknowledge the SDK as a step in the right direction. I have and will continue to praise the contractor for this, not Valve, but the contractor. But applauding the SDK as this perfect apology for all of Valve's shortcomings is foolish. This is peanuts. This is crumbs. Barely an acknowledgement from a company that can do so much more for a game that earns them so much. Listen, I'm not a developer. This isn't my job. I can't fix TF2 myself. I would if I could, but nothing improves unless you point out what's wrong or what's fucked up. That's step one. TF2's flaws must be kept front and center if we genuinely want anything done. Look at what happened when we started talking about shitty hats and skins. We started getting better hats and skins. Sort of. That's at least a little bit of proof that we can influence Valve's decision making. And as the loudmouth I am, that's the best I can do. That's what I've been trying to do for years now. I want to help the game. I love this game. I've been playing it for half of my life. Nothing can replace TF2 for me. But this is why I go on the attack as hard as I do. I cannot stand seeing this game succumb to apathetic rot from both Valve and from that contingent of the community. It's so disappointing and so frustrating seeing bigger figures snidely and even proudly mock any explanation or broadcasting of Valve's shortcomings. They twist and mince words or outright lie to shut down any potentially negative discussion. You have to have these conversations. Otherwise, we're gonna stay this way. It's such an unnecessary culture war when we all want the same fucking thing. We want TF2 to improve. And we wonder why Valve gets away with what they do. It's because if you don't fall in line with the expected, almost compulsory praise for Valve, or positivity in general, you're almost always bullied out of any mainstream discourse. It's really, really fucked up. And it's been this way for years. It needs to stop. Please, for the love of God, this has to stop. I'm sure it doesn't help that this is coming from the black sheep of the TF2 sphere. I know my own notoriety, I'm at least that self-aware, and I'm like the only bigger figure talking about these things. A lot of this discourse is avoided simply because my name is attached to it. That's how petty this is. For instance, if Uncle Dane or Soundsmith had made my last main channel video, you would have seen an overnight tidal wave of people crying out to fix casual mode, or to bring back quickplay. Hell, people even told me to my face, or in my comment section, that they wished that someone else made my last video, or spoke about Valve like this, so it had a chance to be picked up into the mainstream. But because it comes from me, it's tainted discourse. It's too negative. That's where we are now. Again, that's how petty all of this is. This unnecessary bullshit culture war because people are too afraid of getting bullied by retards on Twitter. Fuck! It's just so fucked up. I know I'm harsh, but the truth is that we're all on the same side. For many of you, this status quo is all you've known. You think this is normal. But I hope that with my last main channel video and this next series of videos that I'm planning, I can show you just how not normal this status quo is. Ultimately, mods are not a replacement for the level of support that Valve could and should provide. The SDK update doesn't magically invalidate TF2's horrific treatment over the last decade. It's a step in the right direction, that's for sure, but there is a long way to go. Valve has infinitely more resources and manpower to give TF2 what it so desperately needs, and we need to keep pushing for this. I take no delight in relying on Valve for anything, but if they're gonna keep TF2's pulse going indefinitely with loot boxes and official servers, the vanilla game still desperately needs help before it's put out to pasture. Simple as that. Oh god, and then something else I wanted to talk about is a lot of people view the SDK update as Valve handing TF2 over to the community, and some of these people in the community are incredibly talented, and they make amazing things and have done amazing work to improve the game. Again, I have to cite Mastercoms because their Team Comtress project is fucking amazing. They've been going through the code, fixing all of these bugs and optimizing the game. It's awesome, and I pray to God those push requests allow for more of their work to get plugged into the game. That would be fantastic. But when it comes to the modding scene, there's a very long and nuanced history of bullshit. You gotta remind yourself that it's not Valve handing the game over to the community at large, it's Valve handing TF2 over to its modding scene and content creation cliques, mostly comprised of all the same people that have been here for well over a decade. Pretty much everyone who's interested in working on TF2 mods is already here, and I really can't see any new blood flowing in from this SDK update. A lot of these same people have their fingers in a whole bunch of pies, and knowing their track record, I do not trust these people to perform long-term professional work on TF2 in any capacity. I could go into the long history of TF2's modding scene and its constant infighting, self-sabotage, criminal activity, and all-around unprofessional behavior. In fact, there's a whole YouTube channel that covers the bullshit the modding scene gets up to. They're constantly involved in drama. There's also a long history of TF2 community projects eating themselves from the inside out. The failure of creators.tf, casual.tf. Hell, in the past, Valve had to take direct action against the bullshit community projects we're getting up to. Remember the Invasion update? Well, most of you don't, that was back in 2015. But you remember the Invasion update, where the project leaders tried to take the lion's share of the revenue for themselves and fuck everyone else over that actually worked on the update? This is why we don't have community projects anymore. Because the community fucked it up for everyone else. So now Valve has basically said, fuck it, you guys keep all your shit to yourselves, we want no part of this, have fun. That's how I interpret this. We need to retire the idea that TF2's modding scene is a bunch of superheroes that are gonna pull TF2 back from the brink of death or irrelevancy. They simply do not have the capacity, the professionalism, manpower, or time to do this. It's irrefutably inappropriate to rely on the modding scene for the level of support that Valve should provide. Don't get me wrong. For the love of God, don't get me wrong. The SDK release is awesome. I'll say it again. It's awesome. It's great that mods are going to be available on Steam, and some new projects will inevitably come forth. But we have to stop treating the SDK release like it's the second coming of Christ. I know I said that before, but I'll say it again. For me, the SDK update is a clear message that Valve is done working on TF2 in any serious capacity. Obviously, this has been true since 2018, but they finally said it. so to speak, by releasing the SDK as a sort of severance package for the community. In fact, I think it goes beyond this. Remember, this is Valve. This is the company that consults behavioral psychologists for game development. Every move is planned, calculated. Something that I've seen very few people catch about the SDK release is that it looks like Valve is casting a wider net for outsourcing. To me, it looks like Valve is fishing for their next game. Deadlock is happening, but its development is slow, and it's very clearly not going to be appealing to that many people. And to me, signs point towards Valve fumbling the Deadlock ball. Its future is iffy. So, they're outsourcing game development. They already outsource almost all of the work on their other games to the player bases, so why wouldn't they outsource game development too? That's very clearly their next step. You give the people the tools, and they'll do all of the work for you, at a fraction of the cost. Valve is very good at maximizing profits while minimizing workload. They're fanatics for automation and optimization. It's why they can only have 300 employees. The SDK release makes perfect sense. The players already make all of the microtransactions, so why not have them make the games too? Everything Valve does is planned with years of time in advance. So, I suspect that sometime in the next 4 to 6 years, we'll see a mod that was put on Steam become one of Valve's next products. I'm not saying that Valve offloading the work onto their consumers is a bad thing, but the point is that there's always an ulterior motive. Valve didn't release the SDK update because they care about the game, they're planning something. There is something poetic about TF2 starting out as a mod for Quake and then ending as a potential source for a new game through mods. Time is a flat circle. Long story short, not much has changed for TF2, at least not yet. I really hope more significant community fixes go through, but given the last 2 years of not fucking much, I'm not holding my breath. Valve clearly invests in TF2's longevity, so there's absolutely zero reason why we shouldn't ask for more improvements that would help with that longevity. Everyone wins. And that's it. Expect what I hope to be more frequent uploads on my main channel. I'm gonna stop putting deadlines and release dates because that was a mistake on my last big video, so it's gonna be here when it gets here. Yeah. Also, check out my TF2 servers. They're pretty much vanilla. You got a massive map pool, no class limits or no bullshit gimmicks, just mostly vanilla TF2. I have to say mostly because I remove crit ramp up and that pisses people off for whatever reason. Don't give a shit. That's about it. I'm done talking. See ya.